Welcome to Veteran Voice. My name is Larry McCullaugh, and I'll be your host again today. And we have a very special program for you all today. I know that in the past, those of you who have been viewers on a regular basis have noticed our World War II and Korean veterans. Well, we've got some more World War II veterans today, but they're very, very special veterans. We have 3 females who served in World War II in the military, and it's our honor to have them here today. On the left, I'd like to introduce Vera Newton. Newtown, is it?
Newtown, yes.
Vera, welcome to the program. I'm glad y'all came out today. Angie Apperson. Angie, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
And Dorothy Peyton. I've been talking to Dorothy for several months now, trying to get the program lined up, and we finally got it taken care of. So welcome all of you to the program today. I'd like to start like I do with all the guests. Vera, why don't you tell us when you went in the military, what branch you went into, and why you went into the military.
Well, I joined the Marines in May of 1943, and I was discharged in September of 1945. And I joined because I just thought they were looking for women to relieve the men so they could go to war.
And where did you take your, now you went in the Marines?
Yes, I took my boot camp at Camp Lejeune, then spent 2 weeks on mess duty, then was sent to, the 9th Motor Transport class there at Camp Lejeune, and then I was sent to Cherry Point and then began my duties, and I drove trucks and buses, and then I was sent back to Lejeune for a short while, and then I was sent back again to Cherry Point, and from there I was sent to an auxiliary air station down in Congaree, South Carolina. That's close to Columbia, South Carolina, and that's where I was discharged.
So they moved you around quite a bit, but you
just in North and South Carolina.
Well, at least you had some pretty countryside over there, and
yes.
that by doing what you did freed up men so that they could be on the battlefield there.
Right.
Good deal. Angie, how about you? When did you go in and what branch? And give us a little background.
I went in March of '44. I had just graduated from college and was teaching school, and I wasn't really too happy. I wanted a little bit more excitement in my life, and then Uncle Sam was pointing his finger saying, I want you, you know. And my aunt, who was a teacher, and my cousin, who was a nurse, had gone into the WWII. So I decided that I would go into the Waves, and my sister followed me. She went into the Waves. And I had boot camp in Hunter College, New York City, and the Yeoman School at Stillwater, Oklahoma, A&M, in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and then had tour of duty at the U.S. Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida. And I was discharged in, after 2 years and a month, something like that.
And what was your MOS, your job responsibilities? Were you?
I was a yeoman, which means that you worked in an office. You did secretarial duties.
Okay. So you were the one that made sure all the paperwork got put in the right place so everybody knew where they were supposed to be going. Okay. Again, freeing up the men so that they could be on the battlefield. How about you, Dorothy? Tell us about your getting involved in the military.
Well, I went in March of '45 and got out in October of '46. I was some of the last ones that went in. And when we went in, we knew that we were going into the medics, and we were able to pick our hospital. And I went in and had my training at Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, 4 weeks basic and then 4 weeks medic. And then we were sent to, I went to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, to Brooke General Hospital there in San Antonio. And I stayed there till I got out, and I was even separated there because of, on the base in 46.
46.
And I was a surgical tech.
Okay. Well, I think that the greatest thing about having the 3 of you here today is that I've got the Army, the Navy, and the Marines here.
And are we going to fight?
I hope not. I think we'll probably have some of that jousting that always goes on between the services, but we all knew that we were fighting for the same thing on the same team, and I think that's always going to be there, and that is current now, and but that's just part of the fun of it, I think. Vera, tell us, is there any one experience that really stands out in your mind, either like at maybe the end of the war or something that happened to you, either a comical story or something serious that you like to share with people?
Well, that's down at Congaree was where I met my husband.
Really?
And it was kind of different because I was dispatching for the unit, and I answered the phone, and the gentleman on the other end asked for a truck driver, and after I hung up the phone, I said, "Who's that on the phone?" And they said, "Oh, that's Glenn Newtown." He said, "He just came in from Guadalcanal." And I said, "Gee, he's got a nice voice," and that started the whole thing.
Really? Now, was your rank close to the same, or was he an officer or an enlisted?
No, he was enlisted also. I was too. We both were staff sergeants when we got married.
Oh, so you got an even rank. Neither one could really tell you the one.
Well, they always claimed that I was had the rank because my husband's uniform did not show he was a staff sergeant. It showed he was a sergeant because he couldn't get a staff sergeant emblem from the PX.
So you were able to.
So that's what the kids always told him. I outranked him, but I didn't. We were both the same.
I know in a lot of marriages, the wife usually makes the wiser suggestions of what needs to be done. Angie, how about you? Is there anything that stands out, or how did you meet your husband?
I don't have a husband.
Oh, really? You never been married?
No.
You just played the field the whole time?
Right.
Wow, I'll bet that was quite an experience.
Yeah.
Surely you have some, well, do you have any experiences that you can share on the air with us about?
Yeah. A lot of good experiences, which are the things that you tend to remember. You sort of forget the things that sort of riled you at the time. But I guess one of the things that we did that we really enjoyed was our barracks were temporary. They were wooden barracks. They weren't brick buildings that the sailors lived in. Across the street was us were the cadets. We weren't allowed to mix on the base, but we could off base. So we would get together our side and their side, and we would sing, and then we'd make dates back and forth and have a beach party. And that was a lot of fun. But I guess the thing that I remember most is the camaraderie that you furnish, that you, give me a word, that you make while you're in the service. I know I'm still friends with the shipmates that I made. We visit and we ride, and one recently passed away, but we're still keep in touch.
So you've kept in touch over all these years. Isn't that great? I know that's something that even with the generation today, where you never forget that bond that's formed when you're with somebody in a situation.
And then I met
like that.
such wonderful people too. I worked for lawyers, doctors, administrators, professors, college professors, and you really meet some great people.
Well, that's great. You've had quite some experiences then.
Yes.
Dorothy, how about you? When did you go into the Army, and how did that all come about?
Well, I was working in an office here in Paducah, and I just was a little bored, I guess, and I just decided I went in one day, and they offered me all this T5 as soon as I finished my basic, got all my training and everything. So, and I got to pick the hospital, and so I thought, well, that seems like a pretty good deal. And like she said, our barracks, we're notorious Barrack 7 because we always stuck together. And I got a phone call from one of my friends in the Barrack 7 the other day.
Really?
Yes. She's still in Texas, but we get together and talk occasionally. We've met a few years ago in Nashville for a visit.
Now, did you have any experience that stands out in your mind that
Well, of course, we had the boys that were coming back, and some of them were patients when I went in there, and some of them were still there when I left because they were had legs. I worked on orthopedic and lung or thoracic surgery, and of course, some of them were still on crutches and still in the hospital when I left.
So you saw firsthand a lot of the brutality of what was going on on the battlefield overseas.
The remains of it, what happened later. I know there was a lot of them that were prisoners at the Philippines, and they still had problems with worms and all of that. And I did meet General Wainwright when he came and was a patient at our hospital, and he came around and visited all the boys who were prisoners.
Really?
Yes.
That must have been quite a thrill to be able to.
And he, of course, came on the ward and was talking, and he was so friendly and just didn't act like he had any rank at all.
Just a down-home fella, huh?
Yes.
I bet that was exciting for the whole base, wasn't it?
He was a patient at the hospital for a few weeks.
Well, tell me a little bit, without getting too personal, what your social life was like. I mean, you told me that you met your husband there. Did you got married, I presume, while you were in the military then?
Yes.
So after you met him, there wasn't a whole lot of partying or dancing or carousing around. It was
Well, no, but we didn't really look for anything. Like both of us were athletic, and I was on the basketball team. He was on the basketball team. We'd fly to other bases and play, and we just. And then the movies were only 10 cents, so you could go to as many as you wanted. And things like that. You just made your own fun right there at the base. We seldom went off the base. None of us had cars, anything like that.
well, there were a lot of things that were in such short supply. I know. I obviously I'm not old enough, but I remember hearing about rationing.
Right.
That there were a lot of items that you all back here made
shoes
a
were
lot of
even
sacrifices.
rationed while you were on the base, or at least
Right.
they were.
And you had to have permission to go to the bank. Had to get permission to wear a white dress to get married. And you had to get permission to turn around.
They were controlling everything pretty much, huh?
Right.
I had to get permission to date an officer because I was a non-com.
Okay.
Well, we didn't have to do that.
Oh, we did.
We couldn't even get permission. If you did it, behind
the
somebody's
slide.
back.
So even back then they had the thing between the officers and
Right.
the non-coms
But
and
it
enlisted
wasn't
men.
enforced too much. But
Well, we couldn't date on the base, but off base, we could. But a lot of times the chaplain would walk by and see somebody holding hands in the library, and he'd turn his head the other way. He was a sweet old gentleman.
So there were rules, but maybe they let you bend them just a
Yeah, you
little
could-
bit.
We tried anyway.
Or the chaplain, anyway.
Some of the other officers might not have been.
Right.
well, Fort Sam Houston was a free base. There was no, we were free to come and go on it. There was no guard post or anything on it.
Really? So
And
you,
the city buses came right by our barracks, and we could get on it and went around the parade ground and back into town.
now, as far as your obligations or your work duties, was it like an 8 to 5 job, 5 days a week, or
Well, mine was like nurse's duty. One day we worked 7 to 2, and the next day 2 to 7. I mean, we went on and worked from 7 to 10, and then off to 2, and then on to 7. And then once we drew night duty for 31 days or a whole month, and it was from 7 at night to 7 in the morning.
so your schedule was just like
Just like
your
nursing.
male counterparts. It just varied depending on what the duty was.
Yes. And sometimes we had weekends off, and sometimes, most of the time we didn't, unless we had passes.
So you had a little bit of freedom to do what you wanted to do, but
Yeah.
you still had limitations on what you were entitled to get a hold of because of the rationing that was going on nationwide.
Well, we could, around the base, even after we got through basic, we could wear, in our barracks, we could wear civilian clothes, like shorts or something like that.
Good. Well, they gave you some freedom then.
But we, of course, couldn't wear it off, but we could in the barracks.
Okay. Now, how about you? Did you have a regular schedule that you worked by in the
Oh,
office?
yes.
Did you? Okay.
Just like you would work in any other office,
Okay.
And
And did you do Saturdays and Sundays? Were they pretty much yours, or were
Yeah,
they,
right.
were they? So it was like a job that you were wearing the uniform and you had certain rules and regulations.
and you
had
were
to
well
abide by.
taken care of.
Food was pretty good.
Food was good, and
Very good.
everything was good, really.
Well, we had patients' rations. We ate in the patients' mess hall.
Oh,
So we had.
Now, we had our own mess hall separate from the sailors. We had our own rec hall, our own beach, and the sailors could come to our rec hall after a certain time, but not before. And the shoes that they were even rationed on the base, because I worked in a ration office once, and I issued shoe coupons, to the personnel there on the base.
so if you didn't have certain coupons for certain things, then
Well, that's the only thing I know you had to have coupons for. See, we had a ship store on the base, and that's where we got our shoes. But you had to have coupons to get those.
I see. So they were able to regulate how much was going to each area, trying to make sure it was a fair
Well,
distribution.
I don't know about that. I just know that you had to have a coupon to get shoes.
I know we were issued shoes when we were issued our first uniforms, and I don't know that I ever wore mine out because as soon as I could wear other shoes that were compatible to them, I did, that were a little more comfortable and not quite as bulky.
Vera, how about you?
We were issued boondockers, boots, men's boots,
Really?
for driving, for truck driving.
Okay.
And we wore our dungarees all the time. except when you'd go off base, but I mean, you could wear dungarees to the movie or to the PX or to the rec hall or wherever, but if you went off base, you had to dress.
So, but everybody else was dressed about the same way that you
Right.
were, so nobody really stood out in the crowd.
No, we were like Dorothy. We had to wear our uniforms on base. Once we got out of the barracks, you had to be in uniform.
Really?
Well, now if they
But
worked
in the
an
barracks, you could wear slacks or shorts,
Right.
like she said, but
if
not
they worked
outside.
in an office, they had to wear the dress uniform.
Okay.
But I mean, if, you know, for anything utility like in the truck driving business, you wore your dungarees.
Well, our uniform for work was a chambray dress that buttoned down the front, had big pockets and a belt. It was kind of a beige color, and we had to wear a U.S. symbol on one color and the caduce on the other.
So there was a little bit of variation between the branches of the service and,
yeah.
and how you were, you know, what you did and what you were dress code and that type
Right.
of thing. So it varied a little bit. Did it seem? I noticed when I watch a lot of the World War II movies, I noticed that all the guys, when they're over doing the battles, nobody's ever wearing civilian clothes. Everybody's always in some kind of a uniform. So by being stateside, were the male counterparts stateside allowed to wear civilian clothes too, or would
No.
they were in
Not-
uniform
not
all the
for-
time?
Not for the Marines.
When we got to our camp, we had to send our clothes home.
Oh,
We were allowed to keep a few pieces of underwear. It was the only civilian clothes that we were allowed to keep until we got to our permanent base, and then we could pick up a few things, but just very few.
and then did they have those at like what we called the PX? Is that what it was, or
We had to go in town for
did you
it.
go in town for it?
And on the in the Navy, it's called ship store instead of PX.
Okay. And that had just different type of toiletry items and
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yeah,
things
we
like
could get
that.
all that,
All things
Just about anything you could get at a general merchandise store.
even food.
And we had grocery store.
So you could, did you normally eat in a regular mess facility, or
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
did you call it a mess hall, or?
mess halls, what we
Okay.
call them.
Because like I say, I'm doing all these different branches here. Everybody got their own.
She said that they had their own, but we didn't, because we ate at the patient mess hall. Because we were, our barracks was right between the annexes and the main hospital.
I'm talking about being out of uniform. Sometimes we were out of uniform if we overslept and we were going to miss chow. We'd jump out of bed and roll up our pajamas and put on our raincoats and run out. One day Miss Banky's pajamas fell down as she was going down the steps.
Did anybody notice?
No, nobody saw.
Really?
About that,
We'd have been called on the carpet if we had.
once we had prayed.
And hats too. You wear your hats.
Parade, and we had to wear garter belts and old cotton stockings, and we were on the parade ground. It'd been raining, and one of the girls' garter belts broke.
Oh, no.
Oh, my
She
Lord.
just sat down, and we went around her.
Well, I guess that would kind of tie up your marching step, wouldn't it? I mean, I've never had that experience myself, obviously, but I can see where it might make you have to double step there to keep up with everybody else. Oh, my goodness. Well, was there any, did y'all have any competitions? I know they got the Army-Navy football game, which is a big deal now. Was there any type of sporting events between the branches of service that you all remember?
Yes, I remember going over to Corpus Christi once to play. Girls played basketball against the girls in the Navy, and I didn't play, but I went over on the bus with them and spent the weekend at Corpus Christi Naval Base.
Now you said you were,
We played, let's see, we played Columbia Army Air Base, we played Parris Island, we played Cherry Point, and the closest game we had was with the high school girls. The first game we played, we only beat them by about 4 points.
so most of what you played when you did the sports was other posts or other,
Right.
but they were basically
Right
your-
in the same area, most of them. Now, we did fly to PI, of course, and we flew back to Camp Lejeune, but we tried to play right in our area as much as we could. Columbia Air Base and
So it was mainly
Fort Jackson.
Marine teams that you were playing? Or?
No, those are Army teams.
Oh, so you
Columbia
got
Army Air Base and Fort Jackson, they're Army teams.
So you got some pretty spirited games, I would imagine.
Oh, we
sometimes.
did. I should have brought I've got an article from a newspaper, and it's got all our pictures in there, and underneath it says, Marines that pack a punch.
Really? Have you still got that?
Oh, yes.
Oh, my
in
goodness.
My scrapbook.
I would love to see that sometime.
Oh, you keep all that stuff. You don't throw any out.
Yeah, you just keep everything. I've got ration tickets and all kinds of stuff.
Do you really? Have you all got like souvenirs and scrapbooks and stuff?
Oh, sure.
Oh, my goodness.
All your buddies.
Do you get them out very often and look at them?
I was looking at mine yesterday.
Lots
Were you really? Well,
Lots of
in preparation for today?
No, I was trying to find something, and I came across that, and I just sat down and looked at it.
It's fun to do that now and then. I
It
know the
is.
pictures
It
I've
is.
got every now and then I'll think of something and I'll try to find a picture, and all of a sudden for 2 hours
You're lost.
I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, wow, I remember that. And, you know, it's funny because some of those things I can remember so vividly, and I can't remember the day before yesterday, but, you know, stuff like that, it sticks in your mind. And I think part of that is the camaraderie that we were talking
Right.
about a while ago.
Well, now, Marines, stick together like glue. We've got a state Marine women's group in Arkansas, and I'm president of the group.
You are?
We meet twice a year.
And do you meet in Arkansas?
Right. In
Where-
different cities to accommodate as many as we can. We met in Russellville and Harrison this past year.
Yeah. What kind of attendance or membership you have?
Well, around 10 is what we get now.
Kind of dwindling down.
Yeah,
now.
most of the World War II ones are gone, but we're getting some younger ones.
Good.
And we've got one girl that actually put in 20 years.
In the Marines.
And she volunteers at the VA hospital there in Fayetteville in the library every week.
Isn't that so? Like a lot of veterans continuing to serve.
Right.
That's really
does.
fantastic. Do y'all ever go to any reunions of any kind? Does your unit have any type of reunions or anything, or just individuals you keep in touch with?
Ours has reunions, but I've never gone. They're usually on one coast or the other, and I'm out here in the middle, so.
Well, I really don't know of any Kentuckians, in the Navy. I know when I was in the Navy and new recruits came in, we would stand on one side and everybody be yelling, is anybody from whatever their state was? And I'd yell, anybody from Kentucky. I never had one response.
Really?
2 years that I was in there, not one response from a female from Kentucky.
My goodness. Well, so you were from Kentucky when you went in.
Right.
Vera, how about you? Were you in Kentucky when you went in?
Oh no,
She's from Arkansas.
I've never lived here. I've always lived in Arkansas.
Well, that's right. You're visiting. You're here for Thanksgiving.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I'll catch up with y'all in a minute here. I really will. But you're the one that Glenn told me about. We got you at the last minute because originally I only thought I had two. And when I found out I had me with three ladies, I was excited. I thought, this is great.
Well, you should be.
I am. I am honored. I really am. Dorothy, how about you? Were you living here in Kentucky when?
Oh, yes. I'm originally from Paducah.
So you're born and raised in Paducah
I'm
then?
educated in Paducah now. I worked at the International Shoe in the office when I went in. And I came back, I went back to work there.
Really? So you had a lot of time that you...
I stayed until I started having my family, and then I quit and stayed at home for a few years and then went back to work.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your families. How many?
I have 3 children. Of course, they're all grown, and grandchildren and great-grandchildren now.
And do you ever relate to them any of your experiences or stories about World War II or?
Well, more now than we used to. My husband was Navy, and he didn't talk too much, and they said not too long ago how little they knew about his service and where he was and all.
So you were in the Army and your husband was in the Navy.
Right.
Well, how's that work out when the Army-Navy football game comes around, or do you care?
I don't care. I used to. No.
Okay, and Angie, you were never married.
No.
So do you have brothers and sisters or
Yeah.
nieces and nephews or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. I have 4 sisters now. I did have 5. One passed away and one brother. And I have so many nieces and nephews and greats and great-greats. I lost count. I don't even count them anymore. So
Hard to keep up with sometimes. but do you ever share any of your experiences with them, or
they never ask about them.
they never ask? So I would think after seeing Private Ryan and the World War II memorial that's just gone up and everything, that I would like to think the younger generation. I know it fascinates me, but like I say, my father was a World War II veteran also. And that was, as I get older and realize the hardships that the entire world was going through, Yeah, it was all. Now your family, I know you've got one son. I
I've
know
got
that
one
for a
son
fact.
here in Paducah, and I have another son down, well, he lives right out of Shreveport in Benton, Louisiana. And he's a professor at Centenary College.
Really?
And Glenn works here with the government project, whatever it's called.
I think it's USAC. I think it's where so you had two sons, and they both turned out good then.
And then I've got, let's see, 2 grandsons, and one is in Iraq. Glenn's son is in Iraq.
Oh, really?
And I've got, let's see, 4 great-grandchildren, I think.
Hard to keep up sometimes.
I've kept a certain amount. Because Glenn adopted a little girl, so I actually have a granddaughter, a young granddaughter, and I've got another granddaughter in college.
Well, you do have, now, do you ever talk to your family very much about your military experiences?
Well,
or?
no, they've never said too much about it. Oh, I think my granddaughter has had more interest than the rest of them. She's looked in my scrapbook and wants to know who's who and what we were doing and all this, and so.
Do you enjoy sharing that?
Oh, sure, I do.
That's great, because those are memories that need to be passed on to the younger generation. Because you all have been referred to as the greatest generation, and I think that when people think that, they think of the soldiers, but I don't think that they probably take a lot of time to think of the sacrifices that you all made, and the sacrifices that your families made also to support the war effort that was going on.
I know for a long time when they'd ask veterans to stand, I wouldn't do it.
Really?
And finally my daughter said, you should, because said you were one of the pioneers in the military.
Sure.
Oh, I've always stood.
Me too.
Because I've always been proud, but I never felt like, that I had any hardship of any kind. To me, it was just
A job.
well, and another life. People say, "Well, I don't like people telling me what to do," but you show me a job where somebody doesn't tell you what to do in one way or another. But we had everything fine. We didn't have any hardship. Everything handed to us, really.
So pretty much your experiences in the military were fairly positive then.
Oh, very,
Very
very
good.
positive. In fact,
I
I've
would have
often
stayed on if I
regretted
could
that I didn't
have,
stay.
but when you got married, you had to get out.
No, well, those Marines are. They won't bend the rules.
No.
I'll tell you what, we have already gotten to the end of the first 30 minutes. I told you how quick it'd go.
Okay.
If y'all don't mind, we're going to take just a real short break here. And I want to come back and talk to you about a couple of other things, like the end of World War II and how you heard about it, and maybe some of your feelings about what's going on today with the military services and the way things are going there. So we're going to take just a little break and give you all a chance to get a soft drink, a piece of that cold pizza. You can microwave it if you want, but we'll be back in just a second, okay?
Sure.
Welcome back. We're going to continue our interview here with these lovely young ladies who have decided to join us today. We were talking a little bit at the break, Vera, about someone that you had an opportunity to fly on a plane with, or was a pilot for you. Why don't you share that with us?
I had to go get my discharge up at Camp Lejeune, and so when we got on the flight line and got on the plane, the pilot was Tyrone Power. So everybody thought, oh boy, including me. I was impressed.
Did you get a chance to meet him or
Oh
anything?
no, he was just up there flying the plane.
Was he a pretty good pilot?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I know he had a lot of other attributes that worked for him. I was hoping he could fly too.
Yeah, he did well. For us anyway, got us where we had to go and took care of us.
Well, it shows that a lot of celebrities were involved in the war effort in World War II, like Vietnam and a lot of things that are going on today. It's really something to know of a celebrity that gets involved in the military. Nowadays they all seem to be able to find a way to not want to go or make their political statement or whatever. So, did you all ever have an opportunity to meet any of the celebrities during World War II that were maybe visiting bases or anything? I know we had one fellow who had, I can't remember who it was, who had met, I think Jimmy Stewart it was. But did y'all have a chance to do that? Or
in New York City, I remember we attended the concert of a famous pianist. I can't remember his name right now. It's not a name that you hear real often.
Hosea Turby?
Yeah.
I got his autograph.
Really? So you did get to meet
Yes,
some celebrities.
There was when the RH negative started coming out, and there was a patient in town that needed blood, and there were 5 of us listed on the posters being RH negative, and I was one that they took, and she was a friend of his, and he came to visit her, and we all got to meet him, and he gave us his autograph.
Well,
He was a
that's
famous pianist at that time.
Isn't it crazy how things work out that way? And is that your blood type? Or
Yes, I'm RH negative.
I'd never even heard of that before. That must be. Is it rare?
Oh no, not now.
That's mine too.
Everybody
That
knows
shows
their
you how
blood
much I know about blood
Everybody
work.
knows their blood type, but they had just started the
Right.
negatives at that time, and positive.
The only thing I knew about my blood work in the Army is that every time they wanted to take blood, they fixed the needle on the end of a rifle. That was the only way they got it.
Well, it's on your dog tag, your type.
That's right. Because that's the first time I found out what it was, and I thought, well, I hope they're right.
You still have your dog tag?
Oh yes, I still have my dog tag.
I lost mine, and I hated it. I really wanted to keep those, and they got lost in the shuffle somewhere. And Angie, we talked earlier about uniforms. You brought a picture that they're going to put on there. Tell us a little bit about the uniform that you were wearing.
Oh, well, our work uniform was skirt, a jacket, and blouse, a tie, and a hat, or a little cap like you're going to see my sister wearing. And then we had a white uniform that we wore for special occasions, same skirt, blouse, and they were designed by Hattie Carnegie. But for summer, we had a one-piece dress that was a gray striped seersucker, and it was very pretty. Had short sleeve, and then we had a jacket to go with it. But we seldom ever wore the jacket, it was so hot. And then we had matching hats for that. But we had to wear the regulation shoes with them all the time.
Oh, we were allowed to wear different shoes.
No, we weren't.
We weren't either.
Except for the white uniform, you could wear,
You had the white pumps. We did.
yeah, white pumps with the white uniform.
We
That
had to
was all.
stick with brown all the time.
So they did have a certain way they wanted you to look, depending on which
But
braces.
when I look back and look at my pictures, I was looking for some not too long ago, and every time I had a dress uniform on, I had my gloves with me. And now I don't even care to put
Right.
gloves on.
I hadn't even thought about that. Was summertime, wintertime, both, or?
Anytime we had a dress uniform, it seemed like I had gloves on, with me. I didn't have them on, but I had them with me.
Carry 'em.
I'll be darned, I didn't know that. I used mine at Fort Knox, but that was cold when I was at Fort Knox. Of course, Fort Knox is a unique place. I think I've said before, Fort Knox is the only place in the world where you can take a 10-mile march and go uphill the whole time and still end up right back where you started. I don't know how they do that. I don't know how they do that in the Army, but I'll tell you, that's the way it felt to me. Now, something else we were talking about was movies at the break, and some of the different movies that were out during World War II, and what you were able to go out and see as entertainment. You were talking about something that you're doing currently on Wednesdays?
Yes, it's down at Maiden Alley. It's for senior citizens, and the funeral homes, Lindsay's and Ross sponsors it. And they're old black and white movies.
Really? Can you recall a couple of them? I don't want to put you on
Well,
the spot.
last
right?
time it was Kill a Mockingbird,
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
and a Philadelphia Story, and Stagecoach, and some of those. I think it's White Christmas next time,
Oh, gosh.
or Miracle on 34th Street, one of the two.
So those are the good old classic movies.
Yes,
I've
they're-
noticed that recently all the movies they're coming out with seem to be remakes of other movies. And they don't have anything original, but a lot of the good stuff's been used up.
Well, of course, all the actors and actresses are dead now that are in these movies.
Now,
Mrs. Minifer was a very popular one.
Oh, yes.
And Since You Went Away, it was Shirley Temple and Jennifer Jones. And
do y'all get out to see very many movies? I mean,
no, I don't.
Probably kinda limited
I buy
on it.
videos and watch them at home.
do you?
Right.
You still get the classics, the good stuff. That you,
But
you
they've
enjoy.
changed them so much that sometimes you don't even
You
recognize
don't
them.
recognize it, right?
All these artists figured they have to put their own little twist and spin on there nowadays. I think that's being politically correct, which some of us are not too good at, but I won't pursue that too much farther. Now, travel, you had a unique experience when you got out as far as a travel experience.
after I got my discharge, we went down. There were 5 of us going back to South Carolina. So we went down on the line, and the pilot said, well, you can't ride anymore, you're not Marines. So we decided we had to get back. So first we hiked a while, and that didn't work. And then we got on a bus, and nothing seemed to want to go between North and South Carolina. Everything went from one side of the state to the other side. So anyway, finally, I think we ended up in Columbia somehow, and I said, well, I know how we can at least get home. So I went down on where the trucks were, and one of the fellows took us home, and took the girls to the base. And then he said, you want me to drop you at your house or at your apartment? I said, sure. So we were right outside the base. So anyway, I got out, and he said, I'll wait till you get upstairs. And I knocked on the door, and Glenn says, who's there? And I said, well, who are you looking for? So anyway, that was my trip back.
So that was one of those cases where you're being in transportation while you were in the military.
It didn't do me any good till I got back to the base.
That's one of those typical military type catch-22s. It's like, well, you got to get out of the Marines because you're married now. But now that you're out of the Marines, we can't take you anyplace.
Right.
And that's like it was with me when I first came back from Vietnam. I was 6 days short of being 21 years old. And I came back, and they gave me a brand new uniform and all new ribbons and new sergeant stripes and haircut. Boy, I walked out of there looking like a re-enlistment poster. And I had a 6-hour wait in Chicago, Illinois at the airport. And I was finally going to get to drink a cold beer. I'd been drinking warm beer in Vietnam for so long. I was fed up. And I walked in, and I told the guy, give me the biggest, coldest draft beer you got. He said, let me see your ID. So I gave him my travel orders and my ID. He goes, you're not 21. I said, yeah, but I just got out of the Army. He goes, yeah, you're not in the military. If you're in the military, I can serve you. But you're not in the military anymore. You just got out yesterday. I said, yeah, but I've been in Vietnam for a year and a half. And he goes, should have drank beer while you were over there? I said, I did. I'd like to have a cold one now. Guy wouldn't serve me. I went to the USO and ate stale donuts and cold coffee. But I did get home. So I know how those catch-22s can work.
Right.
They'll throw them at you sometimes. Now, we know how you got out of the service. Well, anything unique happened to you, Angie, when you got out?
No, but I suppose that it was the biggest adjustment I ever had to make was coming back to civilian life.
Really?
Right. I held on to the Navy lingo. I couldn't get rid of it, and to me, most civilians were just sort of stupid. But I eventually made an adjustment. But that was the biggest adjustment I ever had to make.
So there was
going back to being a civilian.
How long did it take you to kind of readjust?
Oh, 6 months.
Did they have any kind of debriefing or anything, or did they
No.
just, war's over, your time's up, here you go?
Here's your discharge, you're on your own.
Have a good time. Dorothy, how about you? Did you have any kind of readjustment? Of course,
No.
you know, the field you were in was pretty unique in the fact that you were working in the medical field.
But I didn't stay in it. I went back to work at the International Shoe.
Okay, so you
And
went back to what you were doing right before
I
you
just
went in?
moved back home, and just like
Just took a little time out to serve your country, help the country out, and then go back to work and pick up where you left off. That's a good plan.
You're talking about memories. I went on the trip to Washington, D.C. with Sandy Hart.
Sandy Hart, yeah. Tell
And
us about that.
it was a marvelous trip. How they got it together, I will never understand. They did a wonderful job, and it's a beautiful, beautiful monument. It's large, but it's not massive looking, and it's just really pretty, and it was well worth the time to go.
Now that was quite a trip, as I remember. Sandy started that, I think, as
Yes.
just a little thing to do from Western Kentucky, and before she knew it,
The whole state was involved.
yeah, and the more she did, the bigger it got. And I can remember her; she would call me at times, and you could almost hear the panic and desperation in her voice, because it was like she's. I started
Hated
this
to
as
say
small.
no.
Yeah, well, she is, and she's a wonderful person. We're going to have her on the program too sometime. But
Well, there were 17 buses at the
my
end.
Lord,
It's the first time that when we went to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier that they have ever let them go around like they did.
they let you do that.
The buses were all escorted in
My
at
goodness.
4 o'clock in the afternoon, and 4 men from the group laid the wreath of the Unknown Soldier.
Really, that's pretty special. Do you know how many veterans altogether went?
There were around 800, I think.
My Lord.
No, 800 altogether. I don't know. There were a lot of wives and widows on it, and I don't really know how many, but there were probably 400 or 500 were veterans.
I can only imagine the logistics
Well,
of
there
that.
was a busload that went to Europe in
Yeah.
September, but some of those were wives.
Did you make the? Did you tell us about that?
Oh, well, it was, people asked me if it was a fun trip. I said, no, it wasn't supposed to be a fun trip. It was a good trip, but you don't have fun looking at where 36,000 men died, you know. But it was well worth it, and I'm really glad I went.
I understand the cemeteries over there where
Oh,
the
yeah,
Americans.
they are gorgeous.
I hear they're kept
They
immaculate.
are beautiful.
They are.
I was talking to one man, I don't know, he wasn't middle-aged, but he was, you know, about that, getting about there, but he said that's all he'd ever done, and that's all he was ever going to do was take you at the cemetery.
Really,
But
Yeah.
they are beautiful.
that's really. I bet that was quite a trip. How long did that trip
2
last?
weeks, 15 days.
My gosh! And was Sandy involved in that too?
Yes,
Tell you that girl just goes and
Yeah.
goes. She's
It
like
was,
that
they were
Energizer
the
bunny.
tour directors. It was sponsored by Collette Vacations.
Okay.
But
Well, I'll bet that was quite an experience. Probably very
Oh, it
memorable
was,
for some of the
yeah.
fellows who may have landed over there. It had to have been very emotional for them.
oh, yeah, it was.
Dorothy, do you? I'm sorry, Vera. Do you go on any kind of trips or anything like that too?
Well, now, but not. They're just special, you know, vacation trips. They're not to cemeteries or anything to do with veterans like that.
Well, you're pretty busy already with the position that you hold with
Right.
all the Marines there. So,
Right.
you know, at least you all still have got the camaraderie. You remember that, like you were saying a while ago about the friends that you make, and those bonds that just never go away. Let me ask you all, I've asked the other World War II vets about this. Do you remember where you were and when you heard about the end of the war? You jumped right away. Go ahead, tell me.
I was on a station at Pensacola, Florida, and all cadets on one side of the street and the waves on the other. We all got out in the street and yelled and screamed and hollered and danced and sung and just had a good time.
Vera, you were out of the military when World War II came, or ended, I mean?
Well, let's see. I was there for Japanese surrender, I think.
Okay.
Wasn't that first?
Yeah.
And I remember then we did like she did. We all came tearing out of the barracks and jumping up and down and screaming and having a good time.
So did you hear about it on the radio or just by word of mouth or
I don't remember
I-
how I
I
heard
don't
about
remember
it.
It came on
either.
the radio.
even the
Is
radio?
that it?
That's the way we heard it.
And how did you react? Same.
I was on duty,
television.
and when it came on, and I think I was taking care of a patient when we heard it. And of course, a lot of them were patients, and there were a lot of tears. And they
Yeah.
were happy.
I can imagine. Just glad that it was over.
Yeah.
Because it was such a long and brutal war. I mean, people from my era that went ahead and went to Vietnam and chose to serve their country were inspired by people like you and my father and that of your generation, because it was the right thing to do. And I know that we're involved in a situation now with the war against terrorism and everything, and it's a lot of the young people today are not quite as willing to make the sacrifices that you all made back in those days, and there are a lot that are. I mean, don't get me wrong. And I know that everyone supports the troops that are over there and what they're doing. I know we're all trying to send care packages, and they've got a lot of things that you all didn't have. I mean, they've got their emails and phone cards, so they've got it quite a bit better as far as being able to communicate with the people at the home front. But the hardships that they're enduring there's no good
But
war.
they have never had to endure any hardships, period, even here. Now, we all grew up when times were hard, at
Oh,
least
yes.
I did.
Oh, yeah.
So we were accustomed to hardships. But they've always had everything handed to them on a silver platter.
So that's why they're, I guess, reluctant to sign on that dotted line. And some of them are scared to death of just basic training and boot camp, let alone going into a combat zone.
I know when I was in, I know for some of the girls that I knew, it was the first structure they ever had in their lives.
Really.
Especially in boot school, you know, you have to do everything at a certain time, on time, and in a certain way. And it's the only structure they'd ever had in their entire lives.
Do you feel that now you apparently had some of that structuring before you went in?
Oh, yes,
Do
from my
you feel-
mother.
Do you feel the discipline? You were ready for it anyway.
Right.
Do you feel
It
it
didn't
helped?
bother me.
Do you feel it helped those who weren't
Oh,
accustomed to
yes.
it? And how about you? I know that.
I enjoyed it.
Did
I was like her. I had a schedule that I stayed on most of my life, and it wasn't too rough on me. The calisthenics was harder than anything because I'm not real athletic. And as I said, we had to do push-ups and all of that with a dress on, or fatigue dress.
We didn't do that. In
We-
boot school, we didn't do that at all.
Oh, we had to do push-ups and sit-ups and get down on the ground and all that.
Oh, now, how about you, Vera? I know that the discipline in the Marines is pretty stiff, at least
Right,
from what I hear.
But to me it wasn't much of an adjustment because when I was in college it was the same way. You had all these rules to follow and you did it or you didn't stay. So
Back then,
It
things
didn't-
were so much simpler. Everybody just obeyed the rules, followed the golden rule.
Right.
You know, don't make waves, don't make trouble, and you know, it seems like things must have been a lot more pleasant and simpler back then. And even with the war going on, everyone united together. There was one common cause. Whereas as time has advanced, everybody's got their own little area that they're trying to worry about, and they don't want their ox gored, but they don't come out and do the volunteer work like they used to. So you all are really to be commended for not only your service then, but what you're still doing now. Now
well,
go
I
ahead.
volunteered 2 times a week.
Do you?
We have all our churches have banded together, and we take care of the needy in our area. And I work as a receptionist for this group, and we meet, or I go on Tuesday and Thursday. Our clothing, well, what do you want to call it? Clothing section is open on Saturdays also. But we help with utility bills and medical bills and mostly prescriptions. And anything else that turns out to be a real need. Now, we do not pay rent. We don't. We tried that once, and we had people coming from trailer parks. They just keep sending their people in, and so we get all these people to take care of, and it just didn't work that way. But other than that, we do really, and everybody's real pleased with the way we help the needy in the area.
It seems that there are some
And
people.
we're getting more and more since we've had these hurricanes and people have moved up into Arkansas, and they stay. They don't want to go. Well, they can't. Some of them can't go back anyway. But I mean, a lot of them decided they don't want to go back. They're just going to stay with us.
Well, right, they haven't got a lot to go back to right now. They
Right.
obviously appear to like it in Arkansas. It's pretty country over there.
And
very
our unemployment rate is very low compared to most of the other places.
good. So a lot of
So there are a lot of jobs available. Now, some of them aren't high paying and some aren't what they are used to doing, but they can use them for temporary, and then they can maybe work into something that they really want.
I know that we've all learned over the years that when you start a job, you don't get to start as vice
the top.
president to the CEO.
And a lot of people don't know that, though.
You're right. You're right. You know, and they want to start at least midway up.
Right.
And I remember, at least in my generation, and I'm sure with yours, you kind of got to work your way there. That's the whole idea of doing that, is to get the experience so that you know how the business operates. You don't come in and on the third day think that you're going to be able to run the company if you just got there. Plus, it tends to irritate those who have been there for a few years. Now, I got a question I got to ask you because a friend of mine told me about this. When you wore your cap or your hat, what did they refer to it as, a cap or a hat, or did they have any?
A cap, I think.
Yeah. And how about
We
you?
had both caps and hats,
Okay.
brimmed hats and
Yeah.
caps.
We
Marie?
did too, but they usually call them our cover.
Your cover? Okay. I can remember somebody telling me they had run into a very high-ranking commander, commandant of the Marines, and they were talking about the cap, and he looked at him very
What cap?
disgustedly, and he said, "You mean cap, hat, lid?" And he goes, "That's a, what do you call it?" He said, "Yeah, it's a lid." That's what he called it. He said, "That's a lid." And I said, I don't think I've heard that, but if a Marine that high-ranking tells you it is, you better not argue with it.
Say it is.
But I know that of course, all the service branches are very proud of what they've done, and they've all done in their own way, what they were assigned to do.
Do you know the Marines are branches of the Navy?
That's right. We had to put up with it the whole time.
Yeah, I know that the Navy and the Marines, you
I had
guys,
to get that in there.
I'd have been disappointed if one of you didn't. I mean, because I know how that works out.
Well, the Air Corps was part of the Army
Right.
in World War II.
That's right. There was no Air Force in World
No.
War II. That was
No,
the Army Air
there
Corps.
wasn't any. There was the U.S. Air Force, and Army Air Force. And, no, I was
We-
telling Vera before that one of my friends and I, when I was visiting her, we were trying to think what the Lady Marines were called. In the Navy, we were waves. In the Army, they were whacks. In the Coast Guard, they were spars. And we couldn't think of what the Lady Marines were called. She said they weren't called.
We didn't have any.
You were
Well,
Marines.
Well, they call us the WRs, the Women Reserves, because actually when we went in, we enlisted in the USMCWR, Women Reserves, and that's what they call us.
Well, at first it was Army Auxiliary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of
auxiliary
people
corps.
in think that the A in WAVE stands for auxiliary, but it's never stood for auxiliary. It's women accepted for volunteer service.
Really? I didn't know that. So everybody, I'd heard of the waves and the wax before, but I'd never, they're calling it auxiliary. That by
The spars, you hear the spars?
Spars,
They're Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
That's Coast Guard? Okay, I had not heard that terminology before either, but
And we were just the WRs, Women Reserves.
just doing your jobs. Is there anything, we're getting a little bit close to the end of the program. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk about anything that they wanted to talk about today. So since I contacted you first, is there anything that stands out in your mind that you'd like to tell the viewers about, any experience you had or any advice you'd like to give the younger people today? Anything like that you'd like to share with them?
Well, they wouldn't listen to me anyway.
Well, yeah, but it wouldn't hurt to go ahead and tell it if you'd like to, Dorothy.
Well, there's a lot of them that are going in, and some of them are making careers out of it, and a lot of them are in reserve and all now, which are good experiences for them. But it was an experience that I'm glad I had.
You think it probably makes a better person, a more
Definitely.
well-rounded person?
I think so.
I would agree with you on that. Angie, how about you?
Oh, I think it's the best thing I ever did. Before I went into the service, I had been to college and over into Missouri and Illinois and Tennessee maybe, but that was all, and this was just a whole new world that opened up to me.
So the experiences were something that made you
And besides the people I met.
yeah. And how about you,
It's the
Gary?
same, you just meet so many people and you learn so many things, and it's just an experience. I was so really glad I had it.
So you met your husband in the
Service.
Marines.
Yes, I did.
You had fun and learned that you didn't want to particularly get married, but you could have a lot of fun without getting married. And you appear to still be up and around and moving pretty good, and I presume having a lot of fun
Well, sometimes.
sometimes, whenever you allow yourself to. And Dorothy,
I met my husband after we came home,
okay.
and we were married almost 54 years.
My goodness, that's wonderful. I think that's really something that you were in the Army and he was in the Navy. That had to. Did that ever come up as?
No.
No, it never really did.
No.
You just kind of left that alone, did you?
Most of the problems was over money.
Well, I guess there's some things that never change.
No.
When we were home and the people would get, or Glenn's brothers would get in a fuss with us, we always won, because one was in the Army and one was in the Navy, and there were two Marines. They couldn't get away with it.
You had about numbered.
That was it, right there.
Well, I know that I appreciate your coming. You're in town here for some family business, and I really appreciate the two of you. Do you know if Sandy's got any other trips lined up for the World War II veterans or anything?
They have some trips lined up to go on. I think they're getting one up for Ireland and
Really?
Wales next year. And
But I think it's for anybody that wants to go. isn't it?
anybody that wants to go, it
Oh,
is.
so that's an open thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Okay.
I think there's also one for Alaska that's going to be open too.
Really? Is that going to be some type of cruise or something? Maybe I know. That
I
they
think
do
it's a
have-
cruise.
Probably.
Those are really pretty beautiful from what I hear. We've got a little more time than I thought. I misread things. Let me ask you about mail. Did you all write a lot of letters or get a lot of letters or from either family or friends or?
From family, of course, we could send them free then.
Right.
Sure.
And of course, we had the little, I don't know what you call them, you folded them over, they were
Victory letters.
victory letters. And of course, I had quite a few college friends, male college friends overseas, and that's what I wrote to them on. And you had fun sending them boxes,
Yeah.
of stuff like shaving cream and all that kind of.
Was there any kind of limitations on what type of stuff you all could send overseas to them, or
No,
it pretty much
it had to be a certain
Size.
dimension.
size?
Though.
Okay, so you could send cookies or fudge or
Yeah,
Yeah,
cigarettes,
candy.
shaving cream.
But it was real funny. I didn't smoke, but my dad did. And when I got to camp, we were allowed so many packages of cigarettes a week. I'd go buy them and send them home to him.
Oh, I'd buy cartons and send home to Daddy because, they couldn't get anything at
couldn't
home. We
come
could
in.
get anything we wanted.
Now, did you have rationing or tobacco or anything like that
Well,
too?
we had the rationing, but my roommate smoked, or bunkmate smoked, so I gave mine to her.
So we usually worked in Vietnam too. They gave you a ration card when you got there, and they told you if you lose this, you're never going to be able to get anything because you could get your soft drinks and your liquor and your beer and cigarettes and I think one camera and so many things that were available at the PX. But boy, if you didn't have that ration card,
You didn't get it.
you better have the ration card and that little funny military money that they. So that's something you all didn't have to put up with. You got to keep the regular American dollars. Probably weren't very many of them floating around at that time with all the money that was going to the war.
Many of the officers' wives really played up to us because they couldn't buy things at the PX and we could. And so they coming up to us to get us to buy things for them at the PX.
So again, it was one of those things where everybody was united in the same way and everybody was helping everybody else.
One of the doctors on our ward, the captain, was from Benton, and his uncle lived across the street from us. And I had no idea that man existed until we got to talking about where we were from, and we were both from the same area.
Ended up being a small world. That's and you say you never met anybody that was from Kentucky when the whole time. Isn't that something? It's really unusual. But you do meet friends from all over the country, and you make
yeah.
those friendships, and I'm glad that you all continue to keep in touch with those. I know I've got a few buddies that I know that I keep in touch with. A lot of them have kind of faded away, and some of them have passed on. And but I do keep in touch with her. I know a fellow that died over there is my best friend, and I've kept in touch with. He was an only son. I've kept in touch with his family, and I think it means a lot to them.
It does.
And I'm sure that you've got that kind of feelings towards the people that you knew, that bond you formed in the military. So I commend all of you for the job that you did. I thank you very, very much for being here today. Have you got anything, Angie, you'd like to say in closing?
No, that's all.
Vera, any even words of advice
No.
to the young folks out there or anybody?
No.
Just again, as always, we want to encourage everybody to support the troops, regardless of what your feelings are on the politics of what's going on right now. We've got to make sure that the men and women that are overseas that are bearing the brunt of this realize that we're behind them and we back them all the day.
Absolutely.
Right.
We don't want to make the mistake that was made in Vietnam and
Oh, that was awful.
hold the warrior responsible for the war. These people, as you all know, when you're in the military, you follow orders.
That's right, you
And
do.
that's what these people are doing, and some of them are going to come back and need some help, and it's our job and the VA's job to make sure that they're taken care of. So, Vera, I want to thank you very much for coming on the program
welcome.
today. Angie, lovely lady, wonderful lady, really enjoyed it. And you're not married, and I'm not married. Maybe we'll have to get together and go see an old movie sometime. I like those black
I'll
and
give
white
you a
movies.
cold beer.
Well, I'll tell you and I are going to have to get talking after the show here. And Dorothy, thank you so very much for your patience
Okay.
waiting for this to finally transpire. And I do appreciate you coming on today, and you have the most respect I can possibly give to anyone. So thank you for coming on the program. Hopefully we can do this again sometime because I've really, really enjoyed it very, very much.
Well, thank you.
So I want to thank the viewers for tuning in today. And if you know a veteran, especially a female veteran, shake their hand and tell them you're proud of them because they do as good a job as the men do. So hope we'll see you next time on Veteran Voice.